What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new episode of Good Guy, Bad Guy. I'm the voiceless Daniel Cormier, wrestling camp all week. I am now joined by Brett Okamoto and Grandpa. Down there, that's Grandpa Anthony Smith sitting in his rocking chair. Chael Sonnen is in Brazil. He's fighting Anderson Silva this weekend. Boys, thank you for joining the show.
Yeah, happy to be here, DC.
You got it, DC. Maybe because you're missing a voice, maybe we'll get a word in.
I mean, dude, I thought to myself, like, if we were doing a full show, extended 20 minutes, because Brett loved to hear himself talk. I mean, I've never met somebody that won't
I'm
hear
the one who talks a lot on this show.
More than Brett Okamoto. But guys, we are here for a reason. Last week, there was supposed to be a press conference. Then the press conference never happened. Everybody speculated for a week. We were all worried that the fight would be off between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. The only person that didn't seem to know was Michael Chandler. He was the one still training, still prepping, because he just wanted so bad. Let me tell you something. They say when you want something so bad, it never comes to you. It's like the girlfriend. It's like, I want to be rich, and then you live poor. Michael Chandler wants to fight Conor McGregor so bad that ultimately injury happens. Conor McGregor never pulls from injury. Brett, tell us a little bit about your first reaction to hearing that the fight was off and that Conor McGregor was out because of an injury in the fight against Michael Chandler.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was just one of those situations where, as someone who follows this sport very closely, this is actually, I hate to say it, but it's kind of a fun thing to be a part of. If you're over in the UFC offices and you're trying to piece together how to keep this thing together and you're getting different news at different times, it's probably a nightmare. But for the rest of us, it's it's very interesting how it's all unfolding. You know, they had this press conference. Conor McGregor suffered the injury, from what I was told, very, very much right up to that press conference. I mean, they would not have scheduled a press conference had they known this guy was injured, obviously. So the timing of this could not have been worse. He gets injured. They cancel the press conference, but they're thinking that the injury is not so severe. He's got a few weeks. You know, obviously it's going to impact his training, but as you mentioned, DC, he's never pulled out of a fight. He could get, maybe this is something that he could get through. He could still make it to the fight. So there was some optimism there on that side. As time went on, that optimism started to shrink, and it was Conor McGregor is probably not going to be able, or is likely not to be able to do this. But because it's Conor McGregor, you want to give him all the time in the world. You don't want to cancel the fight. So
you also got a $22 million gate to take care of.
Of course. They want to keep that gate. They have an expo. They have all of these different sponsorships coming in. They have people flying in. So it's not just your average event. So there is a big desire to first keep Conor on the card if he can, and give him all the time that he can. And if he can't, then to keep some kind of event together. So it was basically just starting to form a backup plan. And how do you form a backup plan on this short of notice? You just start calling everybody, man. You start calling everybody, and there were people that were called that are not on this card. And there are people that are on this card that at first said, I don't think I can do it. I mean, Alex Pereira, I think we all know, had an injured toe when he fought the last time at UFC 300. He's still been healing from that. He was in Australia doing promotional work, doing sponsorship work. So there were a lot of conversations. There was a lot of effort to put this together, as there always is, man. I mean, I think about the times when Conor threw a dolly through a bus and Max Holloway was stopped from cutting weight in New York. I mean, these guys are used to doing things at the last minute. What made a difference here, DC, is you mentioned it, is just the amount of money involved. You know, it just changes everything when you're talking about a star as big as Conor McGregor. All the new fights that we know of, one of which involves Grandpa on his porch right there, came together yesterday. I believe yesterday, the day before the fights were all announced by Dana White. So that's sort of your timeline. I think the interesting part is that no news delivered by Dana White in terms of how long Conor will be out and whether or not he will still fight Michael Chandler.
You know, when I did this multiple times, I was kind of going like, but then you would like start something else. If you weren't so good looking, nobody would want to hear you talk.
It's a long story. A lot happened over the last 7 days.
I get it. It was a long explanation, and you need to do it in that way. But trust me, at one point I'm thinking, if this guy wasn't good looking,
I know it's hard for you to go that long without talking. It is difficult.
So it was I was like my boy Brett Okamoto. Now, Anthony, you're one of us, right? And Brett, I'm just joking. But you're one of us, Anthony, where we're podcasting and we're talking about what's happening. When all this is happening, nobody knows nothing. But, Brett, and you could probably speak to this a little bit. How did everybody know something but not say nothing? This is one of the most rare times where, as you said, Conor McGregor's out, Anthony. Or at least he's hurt. Nobody's telling that he's hurt. They're calling everyone. So everyone's calling somebody else. So we all have an idea that something is really bad, but it never came out. How did they keep this so quiet for, what was 11 days?
Yeah, DC, I don't know. Fighters are notorious for telling each other stuff. And I think that's one of the most impressive parts is that a star the size of Conor McGregor is hurt. And I think when there's smoke, there's fire. We all kind of figured out like, all right, there's something going on here. There's something not good happening. We start hearing that they're reaching out to people. But even me, like, I feel like I kind of got a pulse on everything pretty tight. Like, it's not too often something happens, DC. We don't already know that it's going to happen. We know about fights before they're announced. We know when people are hurt. I couldn't get anything out of anybody.
That's crazy.
They kept it so tight-lipped, and that's when you know it's bad. Like, you can kind of read between the lines. You're like, okay, no one's talking, no one's telling me anything. Everyone's acting really weird. So that was kind of my indication. Like, okay, this is way worse than we're probably thinking it is.
Yeah, it was crazy to watch. So Pop, do you believe that we will ever see Conor McGregor again? Because Chael thinks that this is essentially him saying, I'm retired. Because he doesn't know that the Conor McGregor today is going to be willing to go through whatever rehab he has to go through in order to get back, especially coming on the heels of what he went through after the leg injury. Ben Askren said he's out because he never really wanted to fight. Do we ever see Conor McGregor fight again, Pop?
You know, this is probably an unpopular opinion right now, but I think we do. Because I think he's going to catch so much crap for this. And I think that the media coverage, the fan outrage, the anger, the $22 million gate, there's going to be a lot of mad people right now. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I can't imagine it's great. So I think that he's going to feel a sense of owing something to somebody. And I don't think Conor likes that feeling. He's going to have to come back and he's going to have to give him one more. I don't know that we see it this year, though. I really don't. I know that there's talk about August or September, and I just don't know. If he's got a legitimate injury that's stopping him from fighting. We've seen him going versus Mendez hurt. We've seen him going versus Diaz hurt. Like pretty hurt, not just a little bit banged up. He was pretty hurt. Yeah. So if it's worse than that, enough to pull out and not be worth taking the risk, we all know Conor's personality. He's a risk taker, and he really enjoys that. So if it was bad enough to keep him out, I don't know that we see him this summer.
You know, he actually put a video out of talking about if you're not injured a little bit, you're not necessarily training for anything that really matters, right? And ultimately that was taken down, but it was just speaking to how nobody's healthy when they go into a fight. Now, the reason I'm hating Anthony is because, my God, you got a beautiful porch, man. That is a beautiful porch. Now, Brett, I will ask you this. Michael Chandler has now waited almost 2 years to fight this man. What does Michael Chandler do next? Does he have to just move on, or do you believe that he still holds the line? He's like, hold the line. You remember that movie Braveheart? Hold the line. You think Chandler's holding the line? You think he is? Come on, he's got to move on, right, Brett?
Yeah, well, I think Chandler's going to do what he has been doing this whole time, and he is going to take his lead from the UFC. He trusts his relationship with Dana, Hunter Campbell, all those guys who are telling him, like, okay, how long is Conor McGregor going to be out? Is this still the fight? He's going to take his lead from that. And if they're telling him, yeah, you know, he's only going to be out for a little bit, this is still the fight, I believe Michael Chandler has waited this long. He's going to continue to wait. And part of the problem, DC, is that who else is he going to fight? That's always been the issue. Is people are like, oh, he should move on. He should move on. What would he have moved on to over the last couple of years? A fight against Arman Zarukian? A fight against one of these up and comers,
Gamrot, Zarukian.
Why is Michael Chandler want one of those fights at this point in his career? DC?
Stop. So let me ask you this though. Oh my God. See, this is it. This is what I'm talking about. And I feel like you're agreeing with him, Anthony. Here's the problem. Justin Gaethje wasn't too good to fight Fiziev. Charles Oliveira wasn't too good to fight Sarukian. We have seen in this division a bit of a turnover. where guys are taking chances to fight the young up-and-comers.
DC.
Is Michael Chandler too good? Is Michael Chandler too good?
They didn't have a fight lined up with Conor McGregor, man. But okay, so here's to answer your question, though. Here's to answer your question. Yes, I do think he should move on. I do think he should move on. It's going to have to come to a situation where it's like, what are you willing to move on to? The reason I think he should move on is to go back to your last question, yes, Anthony. I don't think Conor McGregor will fight again. I think he's kind of showed his cards. I get it. Injuries happen, so I'm not holding an injury against a fighter ever. But time can go by so fast in the Conor McGregor world. It's already been 3 years since he fought. He suffered a very serious injury. I agree with Anthony that if he does fight, he won't fight this year. And so then it's just like the clock is ticking. We know this guy enjoys life outside of the octagon. He doesn't live professionally, which is fine. That's his right. I'm not holding anything against him. I just don't see a world in which this guy, like, this was it. This was the one. This was the right opponent, and he still seemed disinterested. It never seemed like he even really wanted to fight Michael Chandler, man. So it's just like all of a sudden, what? Now he's gonna. Yeah, I think it's very important to watch how Conor McGregor reacts to this setback. If he stays in the gym and he's showing signs of like he's tracking his rehab and he's showing us him getting healthy, well then maybe my optimism will improve. But if he starts posting pictures on a yacht, I don't think this guy's ever going to fight again.
If he goes back to his life, it's over. If he goes back to his life,
for sure.
Nobody will.
Which, by the way, if I was Conor McGregor, that's probably what I would be doing. I'd be on a freaking yacht. I would not be in a gym training for a fight against a killer like Michael Chandler, okay? So I'm not holding anything against him. I just don't think he ever fights again. So what does that mean for Michael Chandler? I personally think if you're looking at the division and if you're looking at if you're an exec at the UFC, you have Michael Chandler fight Justin Gaethje again. They're both coming off of a loss. That fight was a good fight. It was 3 years ago, and Islam Makhachev has said that he wants exciting fights. He doesn't want rematches. He has never fought Justin Gaethje. He has never fought Michael Chandler. So from a hierarchy standpoint, yes, Gamrot deserves a fight. But from a promotion standpoint, Gaethje, Chandler, you have them fight. You promote them as a number one contender. I think that's what they do.
That's smart. You're that smart. Yeah, that's got a smart guy right there. All right, enough of that. Time to move forward. UFC 303 got a lot of additions last night, one being Alex Pereira taking on Jiří Procházka for the second time. Now, Brett, I will admit, for a couple of days I heard some different names being floated as possible replacements, but I knew when speaking to the people that I was speaking to, it would ultimately come down to dollars and cents, whether or not those people would be main eventing. I also know that Alex Pereira is probably the easiest guy for the UFC to work with because he's a kickboxing guy that just fights. Were you surprised that that's where it landed, right? It's like Jeopardy, or it's like roulette, where you drop the ball and it's bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, and it sits somewhere. It sat on Pereira versus Jiří. How early did you think that would be the fight?
I think that's one of the first calls that the UFC made. So no, I'm not surprised. I think when something like this happens, you start to look at who's available. You start to look at who, could obviously make weight. That's a big deal on something like this. Jiří was there, ready to go. I mean, Jiří accepted the day that they called from my understanding. So it was just a matter of, how's the toe with Alex and the travel situation. But I want to flip it around, DC, because I know you're kind of acting host, but I want to know your thoughts on it. If he's taking a little bit too much of a risk here, because we have seen historically guys who fight frequently, champions who fight frequently, we love them for it, but eventually it catches up to every single one of them. So is he doing the right thing here?
I think the benefits outweigh the risk, and I think ultimately that's what fighting is, right? You do enough good things to where at some point it resonates with the people. It always resonates with the company, and then you just continue to get rewarded for it. That's what Alex Pereira does. There's no reason that he should be, and he's not a superstar, the level of Conor McGregor in those guys. But he is about as true a star as we have in MMA right now in terms of guys that are consistently fighting. There's him, there's Israel Adesanya, and there's a couple other guys that can truly move the needle outside of Jones, McGregor. Those guys are superstars. He's a star because of that. And there's no reason for that to be the case unless he did what he did, fighting everybody, fighting everybody whenever they called him, and winning at the highest level when it doesn't seem like he's supposed to. So right now, honestly, this is on brand for Alex Pereira. This isn't something that should surprise people because that's what he's done. Even his first title fight was in a year. Obviously, he had history with Izzy, but then he turned it around and he fought him again. And then he turned around, and after losing his belt in April, he was in the fight with Jan Blachowicz in July, right? And then he was back in the octagon in November. So it's like he's very consistent with his performances, and he is very active in terms of fight career. So this is on brand for him. And I believe for Jiří, it's a chance to try to write a fight that you thought that you could win. I don't know that if I'm Procházka, this is the fight that I'm taking right now because I have no time to train for it, to prepare myself to beat the guy that beat me in an impressive fashion. So there's a lot of changes Jiří has to make. And while he looked good in the last fight, I don't know if he has made those changes. Anthony, you could probably speak to this. Like, did you think Jiří looked different in the last fight? Or do you think he was kind of the same guy as he heads into the fight against Alex Pereira? Like, what do you expect in that fight?
I think, DC, I kind of disagree with you a little bit. I don't know that more time helps Jiří Procházka.
Oh.
I don't know that he can change the things he needs to change to consistently beat Alex Pereira. He's a wild man. If he changes that, he loses a lot of what's great about his style and what makes him him. The other side of that coin is that he's very hittable and that he's there to be hit. He's in the pocket. He's not the most defensively responsible guy in the world, but that's what makes him. Right? Yeah, that's what makes him who he is.
But that's why, Anthony, that's why though, because he's so wild, he can't check kicks. He's never in position to check one kick. And in the first fight, Alex beat up his legs so early that he had no chance to really fight him. Like that's what I mean by
and the same thing happened versus Rakic. Rakic tore his leg up early in the fight. Rakic touched him a lot. And if you look at that and you say, okay, well, Alexander Rakic landed a lot of shots, landed a lot of left hooks, and a lot of leg kicks. Now just up that level, 10 times that in terms of damage and power, and that's Alex Pereira. So could he beat him? Yeah, absolutely. Something crazy could happen, and he could end up in a scramble. It could hurt him. It's possible. I'm not saying this is an impossible task, but I just don't know that more time is going to help him any more than just going in and doing it right now. I think this is best case scenario. Maybe Alex hasn't been training the hardest. Maybe his cardio is not exactly where it needs to be. And you guys mentioned, we're looking for people that are willing to take short notice fights, that are stars, that can make weight. The make weight thing stands out to me because last time I seen Alex Pereira, he was an absolute monster. I think that's going to be the biggest fight he's going to have that entire weekend.
He was big. Does this fight, Anthony, make Alex like the face of the UFC, especially if he can win in the way that he did? Because that would be UFC 300, biggest fight card we've had, knocks out Jamahal Hill. He knocks out Jiří Procházka because more eyes are on him now because of UFC 300. Could this guy become the face of the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you guys know, the face of the organization kind of changes year to year. But I think this definitely puts a stamp on him for this year. And then the 2 years ago, he had an incredible run. I mean, like you said, if you want to do something that not everyone else is doing, you got to do something that not everyone else is doing. When Dean Thomas and I are playing matchmaker, and in our own minds, like, all right, who could it be? My first thought was Alex Pereira because he's the only one seemingly willing to risk it all on short notice and do it, at the highest level with the most eyes. And a lot of those guys aren't willing to do that. Max Holloway maybe would, but Sean O'Malley doesn't take short notice fights. John Jones doesn't take short notice fights. Duplessis doesn't take short notice fights. I mean, these are all the big names in the sport right now, and none of them are willing to do the things and risk it the way that Alex is.
Yeah, it takes risk to become the face of the organization. And if he does this, man, I think he's going to skyrocket. So, Brett, the new co-main event, Brian Ortega takes on Diego Lopes. Now, Ortega was a guy that was struggling for a while. Beautiful arm triangle against Yair Rodriguez in Mexico City. Diego Lopes has been on an absolute tear. What do you make of this fight?
Well, first off, I love it. I mean, stylistically, it's a great fight. If you're a fight fan, you like this fight a lot. And I I like the momentum that both guys have. You know, you set it up right, DC. Brian was a guy who was struggling a lot. And let's be honest, like, I think the narrative when he went down to Mexico City was that Yair was going to beat this guy. You know, that we had kind of seen that fight already, and it had ended quickly because Brian got a shoulder injury, but it was going Yair's way in the beginning. And Yair, even though he had lost in a title fight, was looking so good. So it was kind of naysaying about Brian. You know, it was like, this kind of crossroads for Brian. He loses this one, then where does he go? And then he comes out and he submits Yair Rodriguez. So he's got a lot of momentum. Diego Lopes, he was like one of those guys that when is his big fight going to come? Who's going to accept it? You know, and I think he gets a big opportunity here because Brian Ortega accepts this fight because of the circumstances. You know, he's willing to take this fight because it's a big, big spot. And I got to be honest, man, one of the first names that come to my mind when I'm thinking about this fight is Alex Volkanovski. And what does this mean for him, man? Because I really, truly think that I would be nervous if I was Alex Volkanovski, because this is the type of things where one of these guys has a great performance and all of a sudden you get jumped, man, which sounds crazy because Volkanovski is arguably the best featherweight we've ever seen, only lost to Ilia Topuria in that division. And now he's looking at potentially getting jumped by one of these guys. So I'd be a little nervous if I was Volkanovski. As far as the fight itself, I just think it's an awesome fight and it comes with a lot of stakes. And I'm not surprised both guys agreed to it.
You know, you talk about Volkanovski. I think for him, the concern would be if Lopes wins, now you got another kid right in the top, and you might have to end up fighting him just because now he can't go back in competition, right? Once you're welcome into the top 5, now you continue to fight inside of the top 5. Anthony, I am the type of guy that likes messy. And you know it. I do it to you guys constantly. I run. I tell you something. I go tell somebody else something. I'm literally trying to cause fights. It's what I like to do it because when y'all come together and realize I got you. I like when y'all say, "Oh, I got DC'd." That's like my thing. Got DC'd. That's one of my things. Anyhow, I'm living in the cesspool that is called now pop. They don't call it Twitter no more, but it's called X. Yeah. So I'm living in a cesspool that is called X. And the idea is that they're feeding Lopes to the wolves by fighting Brian Ortega. Do you think that's the case? Or would you consider Lopes the guy that has so much momentum that it's kind of in his corner? Because it's not like Brian Ortega beat a young guy. He beat a guy that's been around just as long as he did. And now he's fighting this young up-and-comer who is just riding this crazy wave of momentum.
No, I don't think we're feeding Lopes to anybody. I think I like when this kind of thing happens. Like, we're putting him exactly where I believe he belongs. And it's at the top of the division. And we're seeing him, other than Mufsar, he's running through everybody.
Yep.
I love the matchup because he's killing people. He's so good. And he's a superstar. The way that these people react to him in these arenas is insane. For as long as he's been I don't know, but he is. The fans have grabbed onto him because I think he's got a great image. He's got the crazy mullet. He's got a high flying style, and I think people really have gravitated to him. But in terms of a skill set, he's dangerous on his feet. And anybody who goes into a fight with Brian Ortega, the whole idea is just stay away from the ground and hope you can be safe on your feet. I think Diego Lopes would welcome a ground fight with Brian Ortega, and I think that's why it's so exciting. I think that the UFC's putting him exactly where his skill set is. Maybe it's not where he belongs in the rankings, but I think where his skill set is showing up to this point, I think this is a great opportunity for him to really prove himself.
Boy, hey, let me tell you something, Brett. I got to tell you something. I'm going to pull the curtain back. So the other day, I'm watching TV, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching this young face, on television. And I mean, he is just waxing poetic. And the technique, everything's perfect. I get a text message from Charles Barkley. He goes, DC, would you get a message to Anthony Smith? I'm like, yeah, what do you want me to tell him? He goes, tell him he does an amazing job. I mean, the improvements this guy has made on television is now making what Charles is like, hey, you got to tell this young man that he's good on TV. Now, Anthony, you're good on TV, but you're also good in the octagon. You're back. You're fighting Carlos Ulberg. You're the guy that's been around the game. So you know what, Anthony? I'm asking you why you're fighting Ulberg, the young up-and-coming guy, in that position whereas Brett thinks it's stupid because he said Michael Chandler was too good to fight an up-and-comer. So what makes you less than Michael Chandler, and why you're fighting Carlos Ulberg, at least in the mind of guys like Brett Okamoto?
Well, I think if I had a John Jones fight or something on the line, I probably wouldn't have checked down to a Carlos Ulberg. But
Yeah.
I didn't really have a reason to say no, DC. I've been living in this like one fight at a time thing and not trying to look too far ahead and not focusing on the title. And so I just had to put this fight into a box.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a reason to say no. I was in camp with Jamal. He was here in Omaha with me. I've been training really hard. I felt ready. I was already trying to get a fight in September. I was leaning towards Reyes possibly. So that I was already kind of like in that get ready for a fight mindset. And, Jamal was here. He was injured. He went back to Vegas. He got some imaging done. He was hurt. And I think I was just the natural progression. I was in camp with him. I was in shape. I've already been thinking about Ulberg, trying to help Jamal. I think it was just the natural call that they would make. And I just didn't really have a reason to say no. I kind of feel like I'm living in this regional scene, like DC. Like I step back away from all the chaos, the mess that is Twitter, the fight world. Like I show up, I do my research, I get on TV, I work the event, and I leave, and I don't really take part in anything else happens around it. So here I am, I'm just training, I'm staying in shape, I'm ready, and a fight pops up, and like I don't have to think about it for 8 weeks. I'm already in shape. I just get to show up, weigh in, and leave. Like I'm just, I don't know. It's really fun to me.
But what you do when you show up, you do what? You do your homework. He's there, Brett. Right, you know what I'm saying, Brett?
I just thought you were going to say like dude, this wise Anthony Smith that's sitting on his porch in a rocking chair. I mean, what like just like I'm staying out of the mess. I'm clearing out the noise. Like, you're getting old, Anthony. You are getting old.
I know. I can't help it. It's experience. It's not age.
Yeah, it is. Anthony, can I ask you a question though in regards to this fight? Or I want to ask Brett. Brett, when you look at that fight and you're breaking it down, right? You watch Anthony, you watch Carlos Ulberg. Is Ulberg ready? And I know Anthony's on the screen with this, so you have to kind of be political. Or you could tell the truth. Is Ulberg ready for this level of fighting? Because in the last fight, this new Anthony Smith, the guy that releases everything, fought amazing in Brazil. But I mean, the guy also just wanted to give you a guillotine. I don't understand how good of friends you two are, because this dude's like, take my neck. I was like, what the hell? I was like, he's going to get guillotined. And right away, Anthony takes his neck. But is Ulberg ready for this, right?
I think that's the question that we want to find out about Ulberg, right? Is that he came into the UFC with such a lack of experience, in mixed martial arts. I wouldn't say it's even close to similar to the Alex Pereira thing, but you can kind of draw a little bit of comparison, right? Where it's just like, this guy's a kickboxer, but what's he? I mean, you get thrown into MMA and it's such a different world, especially if you're competing in the UFC. So it's like, is he going to be ready for it? And I think right now we're seeing this guy get some confidence. We're seeing this guy, he's had some experience now in the UFC. And so it's like, okay, well, where's he at? And so that's when they start looking at a Jamahal Hill fight. I mean, he's going to fight a guy who was holding the belt not too long ago. So is he ready for this? Certainly. Yeah. I mean, to borrow what Anthony said about Diego Lopes, he's where he should be. This is the kind of fight that he needs to be in, and if you beat Anthony Smith, that means a lot in this division. But you also know that if you got a hole in your game, Anthony Smith is going to find it and he's going to show it to the world. So I think that this fight makes a ton of sense. And, for Anthony to be on the same card as the title fight now, and him and Alex Pereira seem to like have this competitive thing going on.
Could you imagine that? If you went 2 in a row, Anthony, and Pereira wins, and you guys have your little, he can't wrestle, he's got holes in his game, you could be living in a whole new world. And I know you don't want to live in that right now. It's what's happening right in front of you, but there's a massive opportunity. For you, do you buy it? Do you buy it when you watch Ulberg? Not Anthony the fighter. We talked about this in the locker room. Not Anthony the guy that is fighting Carlos Ulberg. Anthony the guy that has to break down Carlos Ulberg. When you watch him as an analyst, do you see a guy that can compete with you?
I don't know that I see a guy that can compete with me in a full mixed martial arts fight. That's kind of what I see. I see him in competitions with people that somewhat favor him a little bit. It's a lot of really high level strikers that he's been in there with, a lot of hard hitters, but not a lot of guys that are going to mix it up a whole bunch. No one's grabbing his neck and hanging on him and pushing him up against the fence and banging knees to his body, ripping elbows and then shooting and coming back up and striking. I don't think he's fought a super high level mixed martial artist that can fight him anywhere. If you let him get to his spot though, and let him feel comfortable, and you can see the swag when he starts to feel comfortable. He's got a really nasty long jab. He counters really well. He wants to draw out your counter to his jab. Nice check hook, really powerful, really smooth. And he does. You can tell he spends a lot of time with Izzy because he has a few things that kind of mirror what Izzy does. He hinges at the waist. He doesn't necessarily check leg kicks, but he's willing to throw them back. I think he's good. I think he's really good. I think he's good when he's in the spot that he wants to be. We've seen him before get a little. He doesn't up to this point. I don't know that he's changed it, but up to this point, we haven't seen him really thrive and swim well in deep water. We've seen the loss with Kennedy and Zechukwu where he was kind of running Kennedy over, and you can see that young guy thing start to happen where I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. Everything is landing. I'm not supposed to still be here. And then you can see him start to break a little bit, and then he withers and gets a little bit tired. At this weight class, if you're not really focused on managing your output and knowing when to go and knowing when to kind of take a step back a little bit, we're too big. You're going to wear yourself out. Especially as a striker, there's nowhere to hide. I think you're known for your endurance, but if you start to get tired, you get a takedown, you can actively work while you're recovering. There's really not that many spots to do that while you're on your feet. So I think his skill set when he's at his best is as good as anybody in the world in that one spot. Everywhere else, I think we're gonna find out. But if he has a hole, I'll find it and I'll drive a truck through it.
Carlos Ulberg has an opportunity to really make a statement in his division. If he can get to Anthony Smith, it will be much harder than some people may think. Guys, UFC 303 has now changed, but now maybe we don't have Conor McGregor, but the fight card itself is still tremendous with the new title fight, with Ortega versus Lopes, with Smith versus Ulberg, and all the rest of the fights on the card. It is still going to be a great international fight week. Sometimes the best plans don't work out, but the thing that replaces it is just as good. I know we might long for the Conor McGregor that we used to see back in 2015, 16, 17, but that guy's not here anymore. So now we get guys that are fighting at the highest level, at the top of the sport still, trying to headline a fight card on very short notice. So respect the fighter. Respect the people stepping up because they're doing this not only entertain you, but to chase absolute greatness. Nobody does that anymore. Greatness is almost a thing of the past because people don't chase it down like they used to. Alexa is trying to. Yuri's trying to. Ulberg's trying to. Smith is trying to. Ortega and Lopes are trying to. So I will see you from Saudi Arabia. Guys, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. And the main event's all. Can I get a refund? Guys, can I get a refund? In the United States, it's not going to work out that way. But ultimately, we're on ABC next weekend for Robert Whittaker versus Alaskarov. And then we'll go right into UFC 303 from the T-Mobile Arena International Fight Week. Brett, Anthony, thank you guys for joining me on Good Guy, Bad Guy. And guys, until next time, we'll see you. Hey, make sure you watch old Chael fight this weekend. He's taking on in a boxing match. I can't believe this. All right, guys. Until next time, peace.